Uh-huh.
Oh,
All right. Welcome back to, did we have a webinar last month? Yes, we did. So welcome back to the webinar in the month of May. For this one, I think it's really important to talk about some heat. Dana's here too. So Dana, feel free to just say anything and everything that comes to your mind. She's our nutritionist, dietitian, sports aficionado for EndureALL coaching, and she's also my neighbor. So we're pretty cool.
lucky.
Sharon, we went down a slide today. So when it comes to racing in the heat, that's what we're doing right now for most everybody. It sounds like even Cheyenne had some warm weather, which is crazy up there in Duluth, Minnesota. So the heat, it changes a lot of
Mhm.
stuff for your training, for your racing, for your preparation. And it's really important that you use this time we have now. Hopefully you've got some, Happy Valley's not too far off. You've got a couple weeks to kind of dial this stuff in, but the general knowledge and practice will always be there. So we'll just jump in. Um, and hot races they're a bit of a tough one because athletes routinely will have the same expectations as they do when it's like 60 degrees and they're like, well, I want to run 6 minute pace. And I'm like, but it's 100 degrees. Yeah, but I'm disappointed I couldn't do it. It's like, well, you shouldn't be disappointed. And that's why we need to talk about all this stuff because there's a lot of good facts, right? So, what happens when you're an underprepared athlete and you're trying to get ready for the heat and humidity? Now, remember, heat is a number of things. It's the solar load that's huge. Like sometimes you're running in the shade and it feels okay, but then the second that Kona sun comes out, you are melting. And then the humidity, you might be in the shade running pretty hard and you're still getting cooked alive without the sun even being there. So there's levels of heat and intricacies that you can play with. And again, if you have anything to give anecdotally or any stuff you want to talk about, Adam, just chime in if there's something in the chat. We want this to be fully engaging. If you've got anything to say, you can cut me off. I won't be offended. So, what happens really? Your skin blood flow competes with the working muscles for your cardiac output, right? So, as your body is overheating and its regulatory devices within the body, your brain, everything. I don't know if it's I don't know. Is it the hippocampus? That just comes to mind. Is that something that does with heat? I don't know. Maybe not. So something's going on to tell your systems what to do, and that's where to send blood for cooling and then for organ function. And then your stomach along the way and your intestines are going to be the ones really suffering. And then there's the mental toughness aspect of it. So there's a lot of things happening and that's why it'll punish you. The heart rate drift is also a real thing, and you've probably experienced this going out too hard in a race, and then all of a sudden you're at like 180 beats per minute, and you're like a mile in, and that heart rate's not coming down, folks. Once it's peaked and you're in that heat, it's tough to get it down. Even if you're walking, it's tough to get it back down. So we'll go over some ways to kind of talk about it. And what really is happening is as you lose sweat, as your blood plasma volume drops, that will increase the cardiovascular strain. Just got to think about, I always like to relate it to like an engine, right? You lose coolant or you lose oil, the means of keeping things topped off and operating with adequate lubricant and adequate coolant, you're going to stress something out because you're not pumping, you're just losing blood plasma volume. That regulates almost everything in the body. And your body's going to put all of that near your organs when it gets real bad and you can do a lot of damage to yourself, especially GI tolerance. Have you ever had a hot race and you're like
Ouch.
trying to fuel yourself and then you're like literally get a stomach ache or whatever because you can't process anything, and the only way sometimes to get it out is to like get it out. So remember, GI tolerance is a tough one, and that's really important because even some athletes, when it's not that hot, they can have some sensitivities towards it. um, Dehydration, that's going to slow your digestion. It's going to limit your ability to cool yourself, and it's going to make everything harder. And you're probably going to have a little bit of a tough time pushing yourself. Pacing errors, those become really hard to recover from. And that's why most every time we have a race plan, what do we talk about? Going out easier than you expect to. Because mile one's going to feel pretty awesome, usually. I mean, I'd say mile two is going to feel pretty awesome. Mile one, you're still like figuring out what legs do. You're like, are these things here? I don't know. So, the most important thing also, your unique physiology and mental capacity to handle heat is going to be different than your training partners, especially if they're smaller, especially if they're bigger, especially if they're live in a heated environment or if they live in the Arctic. It's all going to be different. It's all going to be relative to your circumstances. And especially, this is an important one. We'll touch on it again. Is your sweat rate and your sodium concentration within your sweat are going to vary within your person as well. So you can test all that. That's the best part. You don't have to go into these circumstances feeling like you don't know anything. You can weigh yourself. We'll talk about how. This is just kind of a bit of an opener. Anything on this one, Dana? Any notes that you wanted to tell me I said impeccably or I need to work on?
Um, no,
Yep,
I
you
think
nailed it.
just with the GI tolerance piece, like a lot of people, when it's hot out, when it's humid out, switching to liquid calories is typically better tolerated. So that can be something to note is just like obviously as much as you can practicing in the heat, if that's possible, but just keeping that in mind, like if your run is going to be in the heat, maybe on the bike, you amp up your calories just a little bit, maybe like an extra like 5-10 grams an hour, so that you switch to just liquid calories on the run. And that can be really helpful.
Is anybody eating solid foods during the bike these days still, like amongst this group? Not that it's not uncommon, but like some people will be like, I have an Uncrustable at mile 40, and I have done that forever, and I will not stop. So some people do eat a little bit. Let me check the chat here. Yeah, so gummies. Okay. So Dana, chews would probably still be like considered, are those solid? Because they like probably just liquid immediately in your belly.
And those are fine. Like those digest really, really quickly, just the ratio of carbs in there. So,
Okay. So
yeah.
simple stuff. And
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. If you're out training, you can eat anything, right? On race course, it's going to be a little bit more different. So you got to remember that
One
as we
thing
go
I'll add
into.
in at the beginning here is something that I always struggle with a little bit is dew point versus humidity. Um, and it's something that's pretty important to know. And I'll try to put it in a basic kind of term if you don't know what dew point is. The dew point is the temperature at which the air is saturated. So if the dew point today is 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the temperature at which the air is 100% full of moisture. It cannot take any more moisture. Whereas the humidity is the percentage of how full the air is. So humidity is like a tank. So it's 60% humidity today. So the air is 60% loaded. So that means it still has capacity to absorb more moisture in the air. And that is important when it comes to you as a human because you're sweating. You want your sweat to absorb into the air. So if the humidity level is about 60, you're okay. It's got capacity. If the humidity level is 90%, you're going to struggle because you're not going to get the evaporation. But dew point, if you look at the weather the day before and the dew point is predicted to be like 80 degrees, and you're racing and you know it's going to be 80 degrees when you're racing, you're screwed because the air cannot absorb any moisture. So your sweat is just going to sit there. So and if you know, so pay attention to that. Always look at the dew point, and I'm not a weather nerd, so I don't fully understand it, but that is my layman's way of kind of talking about dew point. But pay attention to it because it can really affect you. And that's like if the dew point is there and the air's saturated, you just got to start dunking cold water on you constantly because it's not going to evaporate.
Well, that's exactly why this next slide is this slide, because there is a lot of good evidence and ways to kind of measure rate of perceived effort and how much you should kind of reduce your expectation of pace based off of dew point and humidity. There's a couple of these charts out there. This one was kind of the easiest one to look at without having to do dew point calculations because there's a bit of a formula for that. But the bottom line is that relative heat index, or the even the wet bulb globe, whatever, that's what we used in the Air Force. That is going to really impact your ability to put up the same level of exertion. Think about it like this. If you've got a race and it's like ambient air temperature with all things considered, it's like feels like 100 degrees. The athlete who wins or runs the fastest typically isn't just like a superhuman. They've just been able to mentally struggle and go through that a whole lot differently. And they may come from a hot environment also, that does help. But I've seen like Sam Long run some amazing stuff, and he's a big guy and some heat, but it's also because his mental fortitude is just insanely good. And he even would tell us like he didn't do any heat prep. So I think that when you look at your result and you get bummed out because someone else ran faster, like it's usually the athlete who can slow down the least in the heat who's going to do the best. It's not who can run the absolute fastest, it's who can slow down the least in the heat, especially. And as you can see, you can expect that like that bleed off to get into like that bad idea zone once you start hitting those higher temperatures and higher dew points, and the temperatures and dew points increasing at the same time. At a certain point, everybody is having the toughest time ever. And the only thing that anyone can do is just try to cool themselves as much as possible. Cooling yourself can be from something that feels cool or something that actually is going to cool you, like getting ice down your crotch where most of those veins are. Um, Usually holding it in your hand or putting it in your mouth is a good way to kind of trick your body to kind of like have a perceived effort of less heat. Anything that you can do to cool like the insides, soft areas of your arm, anywhere there's a lot of vascularity in your body, that's where you're going to want to cool things the most. And even those like those sunstop sleeves, if you're in a drier environment, if you get those things wet, it feels like you get air conditioning on them. So cooling is a big part of racing in the heat, and thinking about wearing, probably not a black kit. I've seen tons of people race in black kits. Even Matt Hansen the other day, I was like, dude, why are you wearing this black kit? And it's going to be 100 degrees. But I guess some people are better at it than others. So this chart right here, you can just Google, heat or run pace chart relative to heat. You can find a lot of different things on that. But I'd say you can adapt a little bit to all this. And that's the most important thing, is what we're going to talk to today is heat adaptation. It is measurable. There's a lot of athletes who are heat adapting by increasing their core body temperature through active or passive heat preparation techniques. And usually 5 to 7 days of that show some early heat adaptation, and then 10 to 14 days is pretty much ideal. So a couple weeks out from a hot race, you want to start thinking about how you can passively and lightly actively heat adapt. And we'll talk about the differences of both. And what happens physiologically is you'll reduce your sweat sodium concentration sometimes, from an untrained athlete to like a more trained athlete. You still have a pretty good window there that's kind of tight of your genetic sweat sodium concentration, but you can improve it a little bit anyways, which is important. So some people, who thinks they're a really heavy sweater, right? That doesn't mean that you're losing a lot of sodium. That means that you're losing a lot of fluid volume, which is still critical to replace, but it doesn't mean that you're losing thousands of milligrams of sodium. It might just mean that you're losing less. And the more that you train in it, the better you'll get an idea of it. So that's why we test. Anything on this slide? Anyone else want to chat about? Good to go. All right. Sometimes it doesn't pull in all the graphics the first time. Weird. So current triathlon trends, there's a lot of mixed methods of heat preparation. I know a lot of pro athletes do some of the core heat prep stuff. It's like a company where you have a core heat sensor on you. You can do training and it'll measure your core temperature. It'll give you some feedback and it'll tell you your tolerance. So there's a product out there that is developing it. I know some of the Norwegians were, swallowing thermometers and getting really high end, accurate internal heat temperatures. So there's a couple ways that we do that on the elite side, which is how you all should do it too. And the active side is, remember, active heat prep, you don't want to go out there and try to go simulate a race. All right. You're just going to deplete yourself a lot. You're going to put yourself into the well. You're going to take away quality sessions for the next few days. You may even, dehydrate yourself to a point to where you get sick or something. So just be very careful when you're going out and you're planning an active heat session. Keep it aerobic, keep it more form functionality is key, and then keeping yourself cool in the best ways you can. Sometimes I wear a big brim hat. Sometimes I just try to run in the shade, or I have a loop every mile where I have water stops. Active heat prep is really beneficial, but you want to do that at that lower aerobic heart rate, even relative to the heat, not at your ideal race pace or your indoor cool race pace. You want to go off perceived effort in the heat. That's the most important thing. Let the data be a little bit of a byproduct and don't have to be so crazy about it. Passive, and I think this is super important. Um, like let's say you have a hot swim or you just did a hard swim or just any session and you can get to a sauna quickly within like the next 35, 40 minutes, just that will improve your heat tolerance drastically. I did that before Chattanooga. I was able to go in for the first time, like, 8 to 10 minutes, and it's like a 190-degree sauna. And then eventually coming into the race week, I was in there like 2 by 10 minutes. And the key too, and this will give you a little bit more extra sauce on that sandwich, is let's say you do a heat prep session, you'll do like 10 to 15 minutes. Then you step out of that sauna, and then you can do a natural body re-temperature adjustment. So like your body will bring its core temperature down. You're not going to cold plunge. You're not going to take a cold shower. You're not going to assist with your body's natural means of getting back to a regulated core temperature that it's happy with. Then you go back in the sauna again for maybe like another 8 to 10 minutes. The goal is not to have a mental toughness competition between you and the sauna and to exhaust yourself. It's just to get to that point to where you're just thinking, yeah, this is probably good. No, I'm all right. I think nope, I hate this. And like the second you think that you're really done, you should be done. Okay. You don't want to do too much damage in these heat things. Cause then you could go the other way and kind of ruin some of that heat prep because your body's going to start to panic and put you in fight or flight and you're going to feel terrible. So just remember, we want to have a healthy balance with passive sauna sessions. And you can monitor your heart rate during the sauna. You'll see it come up like sometimes mine's like at 101 beat per minute and I'm still feeling good. There's rate of perceived exertion. You can weigh yourself before and afterwards. And remember the level that you've lost of hydration. Like, let's say I lost 4 pounds. You need to replenish like 1.5 times the amount of fluid that you lost because your body's going to continue to want to rehydrate itself over the next, hours to overnight to the next morning. So remember, just because you're chugging something right when you leave a sauna, that's not going to do the trick. You need to continuously hydrate with sodium and magnesium even, because you're losing all of those vitamins. Usually when you do sweat too, you're going to lose like 90% sodium, but you will lose the trace, potassium and magnesium. So it's important to take some more of those into in the evenings. So that's active and passive heat prep. We don't want this to affect the quality of your training for the next days. So remember your recovery afterwards, getting into bed adequately hydrated and starting the next day with the best step forwards the goal. The goal is not always to replace 100% of what you lose either, especially during a race. You cannot replenish. You just can't. Your body can't absorb and put it someplace as much as you're taking it in, especially if you have a high loss rate. Like there's a couple guys I've done sweat sodium analysis for like 4 or 5 years now with precision. I've got like a medical device and it's real cool. And this one guy was losing like 1900 milligrams per liter of, 1900 milligrams of sodium per liter of sweat loss volume. That's a lot. You can't really get in nearly enough to like not feel like you're just waterlogged and your gums are bad. Like he's an ultra runner. Ultra runners get with the level of exposure. Those are the ones I test the most. So the good news is if you're doing like a 4 to 6 hour race, you're not going to really do a whole lot of damage unless it's really, really hot. So anyways, we want to avoid getting you into too deep of a hole by preloading with sodium and showing up with a really good race week strategy. And of course, myself and Dana and all the other coaches here are really good at that. Cheyenne's on the call too. She's a coach with us. So that's it. Anything on active or heat prep, active or passive? Anyone had success with it? Has anyone noticed that it didn't do a damn thing? Sometimes I felt like this is still really hot and it sucks. And I've been heat prepping. Like, I don't know, this didn't do anything, but sometimes it's like a mental thing. All right. If you have anything, let me know. We'll keep going. So the ladder, right? This is kind of how you want to think about it. Whoa, I just got some. I think Adriana is unmuted, and I just heard myself through her speaker.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how to
It's okay.
shut it
We,
off.
I think I can mute you. You're all good. No, no harm, no foul. So, age group heat adaptation ladder. Just anybody actually. I think 4 to 6 weeks. You want to start to get accustomed to this. You don't want to do this in the last couple of weeks. You want to do it well out in advance. Just like going to a mechanic. You don't want to take your bike race week and they're like, well, we're 3 weeks out. So we want to make sure we get all the logistics for this stuff done well ahead of time. That way you can test, most importantly, your gut response. That's the biggest thing in the heat. And I've had this problem. This is what happened to me at Texas, folks. I took in a whole lot, like 105 grams of carbs per hour on the bike. And I was looking back and I like took maybe 2 liters of fluid on the bike, which for however many hours, 5 or 4 hours, like that was not a lot. It's with how humid it was. And so my gut was just not doing much. It was stuck. And so the second I started running, I was like, this is not how I normally feel. So here we go. And then it got worse and worse. And I wasn't, low heart rate, high perceived effort, feeling worse. And that's kind of the typical, your gut has not been processing what it's been putting in because it was just too thick of substance in my belly. My blood plasma volume was probably too low. So that's why we want to do all this stuff to make sure your gut tolerance is going to give you enough leeway and you can actually access the energy you're taking in during that bike ride and use it on the run. Okay. That's huge. That's why we're doing all this, to have a good run. That is the goal of every triathlete. I don't think I'm wrong on that. You can have a great bike and a shitty run, you still don't feel very good about it. But if you have a good run, man, you're laughing. You could have had a terrible swim, but you're like, yeah, but I ran a PR. Look at me. Trumps everything. So 2 to 3 weeks out, that's when you're going to try to do a couple more overexposures, right? You're going to do active heat prep and passive heat prep. And even a hot tub has been proven to be really good heat prep. So remember, if you don't have a sauna, a hot tub is good too. And there's protocols. You can just Google it. It's not really too difficult. You just want to, the goal is to get the core body temperature over like 100 and something degrees for a certain amount of time. And then your body has just been proven to adapt. There's tons of papers on it. So race week is the time when you don't want to do a lot. Maybe like if I'm racing on a Saturday, my last heat prep sessions might be a light one on Monday and a light one on Wednesday with a ton of hydration before and after. And these are not going to be my most intense. They're just going to be for maintenance. So one of them might be an active heat prep day where I'll go run in 100 degrees for like 20 or 30 minutes, really aerobic. The next one might be a passive session. So anyways, let's just not overdo it. Too much of a good thing is still a bad thing. All right. That's my grandma told me. So don't make the harder sessions hotter. And something I used to do, which was dumb, probably, I don't think it worked, is I would set my bike trainer up in the shower, or not in the physical shower, in the bathroom, and I would have a relative humidity temperature and air temperature, whatever. And I would crank the hot water on for about, I don't know, 15 minutes. And I'd have a space heater on there that was set to about 95. And I would just watch that temperature go up. And I would just drape myself in the miserable towel of pain and just absorb all the sweat and just do passive aerobic heat prep in the shower sauna steam room that I created. And honestly, like, I don't think that was worth it. I wouldn't recommend it. Those are just the things you can learn from for the dumb things that I did. And obviously the goal, as always, let's figure out how you respond to this stuff. It didn't ruin my bike because I live in Utah, and the second that it left that environment, it would dry, and I would dry the heck out of it. So luckily, everything would dry. If I did it in Florida, no way. All right, let me get a picture. So post-workout sauna or bath, just talked about that. That's kind of like the easiest thing you can do. A bath too, even getting up to like your chest. You want to just kind of cover as much of yourself up. Start with about 10 to 15 minutes, build to about 20 or 30, and 3 to 6 exposures per week during that block. And then after aerobic workout, just getting straight there and then rehydrating afterward with sodium, carbohydrate, and real food. Again, if you ever feel dizzy, if you're standing up too fast and you're getting dizzy, remember you might have overdone it. You might have low blood pressure because your blood plasma volume is a bit low and your body's just really trying to sort itself out. So don't want to do that on race week. Don't want to dig too deep on race week. Let's get it done well in advance. And remember, you need to replenish that for sure at least 1.5 times from what you've lost if you're weighing yourself. And I would recommend for sure you try to replicate the environment of your next hot race, whether that's running indoors with no fan, biking indoors with no fan. See how much sweat you lose. Just weigh yourself before and afterwards. Get a rough idea. You only have to do this like once in that last probably 3 to 6 weeks before a race. That's when you want to try to get this. How am I adapting? How much water weight am I losing? Because you don't want to risk that. That can really screw you up. All right. The controlled hot aerobic sessions, that recipe is going to look like a 45 to a 75-minute zone 1 to 2 effort. You can do those in that warm environment without super, super high exposure. Cap it by RPE. And remember, it doesn't have to be watts. Remember, this is something I've leaned into pretty heavily lately, and it's helped me race and train better. We get so focused on the numbers, right? We get so focused on the numbers about what we're supposed to hit for that workout and whether this is going to be a success or how I feel about what I'm doing right now for those numbers, that we forget that our mindset needs to be that we're just racing. You need to put yourself in a mentality, even if you're hitting the numbers, to turn off the power data and just, I want to ride to this perceived effort of racing. I don't care what the power numbers say. I want to race and I want to feel what it is. Feel what that feels like. And you need to do that during some of your training, especially if it's hot. Getting out of the saddle, powering over hills, staying aero, committing to the cause of getting to that start finish line as fast as humanly possible, because it's a time trial basically when you start the race. And the numbers are there to help you, but they shouldn't dictate everything you do. And that's been something for sure I've leaned into a lot more. And even Ben Canute told me that the other day because we were talking about aero. Aero is the number one thing everyone cares about. But he's like, I don't care about how many watts I'm putting out. I don't care about how aero I am. I care about how hard I can race my mind and body to put myself in the best position possible to beat everybody else. That's his mentality. And it was like, yeah, we get so focused on how many watts you're saving or how many watts you raced on. The finish line is the only thing that really tells you how much of a success that was based on your circumstances. So try to find that balance. All right. Anything, thoughts, comments, concerns, pipe up, say something, doesn't bother me. Just let's keep going in the meantime. Also, make sure you're not incurring too much fatigue and you're not losing sleep. Don't do these heat sessions too late in the day because you're going to be limiting your ability to recover for the next session. So, I don't want you doing a 9 o'clock sauna session after, a late day bike ride or something like that. Try to keep them on the weekends to where you can control a lot more and do stuff early. All right, moving on. No pictures on this one. All right. So let's build that sweat sodium plan. Field test it. Weigh yourself in the nude, in a dry kit before the workout. Track the fluid consumed and make sure. It's easier if you just don't drink for like an hour out of moderate to higher effort. You can probably do that depending on I did a 2-hour run today. I didn't drink anything really. No, I'm just kidding. Dana's laughing at me. So yeah, she showed up with a CamelBak with 4 liters. No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, you want to field test this stuff. And if you have a sweat sodium analysis testing session, person around you, just, get that done. It's really easy. It takes 45 minutes. You don't even have to train if it's through a precision system. You literally use a little electronic stimulus to make yourself sweat. I suck that sweat out of a little capsule and I analyze it in a medical device, and nobody has to train. It's cool. Somebody came over all ready to get on a treadmill. I was like, dude, you just got to sit here. So those are really cool. There's good technology out there. And if you can check that with the device, like I said, that gives you the best science. And that's how we can structure a really good protocol for you on race day. And you won't have a gut issue of like Jackson used to take in, 1,000 milligrams per liter. And then we tested him because he was having some stomach stuff and he was like losing barely 400 milligrams per liter. So he was taking in too much sodium and it was really stunting his ability to feel really good about during his later parts of the run when he was taking in everything and it was just kind of sitting there. So remember, your body has a formula that it wants, and it's up to you to find out what that looks like with the tools that we have allotted. So there's a lot out there. You don't want to guess. That's the most important thing. And then we want to practice the plan. As with everything, we don't want to just send it and see what happens, especially since you've maybe brought your whole family and they're wondering where you were and you're at like mile 40 crying on the bike because you had a problem with your belly. We don't want that. We want successful races. Oh, I can't miss this graphic. All right. Cooling. How do you stay cool, right? You got to be on your with your OnlyFans. You got to just hang out with all your fans. So the best cooling plan starts before you feel desperate, right? And so that's like through pacing, it's through good clothing choice, it's through wearing one of those placebo headbands, which it is a placebo. It doesn't actually scientifically reduce your core temperature at all, but it does feel cold for a minute if you get some cold water on there, the Omnius headband. So a lot of people really like that, and I think it's a tool. So those are the tools. Even like I wore like a bandana at Texas on the run a little bit, and it was one of the precision ones that has cooling fabric. And man, it was super chilly on my chest. It felt really good. It felt like really distinguished. I was running with like a handkerchief around my neck. It was cool. Running in the shade as much as you can. Ice is always really important, especially if you can grab it on the race course. Sometimes they hoard all that ice and they don't give it to you, but it's always there if you need it. But again, put those in really important places, sometimes under your hat. And that little bit of reprieve might take your mind off of how hot you're feeling. And I think when you start to think about how hot you are, that's like going to spiral because then you're like, I'm going slow because I'm hot. And now you know why you're going slow because you're hot, because the paces are impossible for you to hit it at that heat level. Just remember there's a lot of reasons why your PR was or whatever you were 5 minutes under your PR because it was hot. So don't feel bad about that part. Um, yeah, pretty much it on the aid stations. They're going to have everything else. And I think other something else. And Dana, if you have any thoughts on this too, something to chime in on when you are running and you're trying to maintain hydration and fueling. I see a lot of athletes get this wrong because they do too much of one thing at once and then too much of another thing at once. And they're just kind of like taking these blocks and they're like, well, I'm in my carb block and now I'm in my hydration block. You can't have one or the other for too long. You've got to mix it in. I always think, and I always like to use these analogies because they help relate, but think about yourself being on like a little IV drip of fluid all day. You're just taking sips, not full mouthfuls. We're not taking full boluses of anything all at once. We're just kind of letting this drip constantly come in of carbs and hydration, carbs and hydration. And sometimes carbs are going to process better with a little hydration because if they don't have enough, they're going to pull, your stomach's going to pull all that liquid from its surrounding organs and interstitial fluid. And that's going to cause you to not be able to cool yourself. And so, again, there's a lot of science there. Over to you, Dana. Anything, tips and tricks on when you're running and you want to stay hydrated or however that looks?
Yeah, I think just an important thing to remember is like solutions that are like 6 to 8% of carbohydrate. So if we take like a 20-ounce bottle with like anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of carbs in it and that like 400 milligram of sodium range, that carb and sodium solution is going to hydrate you the most efficiently versus just plain water. And so that can be a really good strategy, especially like in the heat, one of the biggest complaints I get is like nausea, or people start vomiting, or they have diarrhea. And it's like, in that scenario, having a carbohydrate and sodium solution together is going to be really effective, but it's a very low carb and very low sodium solution, not something that's considered hypertonic, which would be like that 40 plus gram carbohydrate range in a 20-ounce bottle. So just always having a plan B to your normal situation, like what you normally fuel with, and having like a backup plan, because when it gets really hot or when it gets humid or like your race kind of turns, um, you want to have a backup plan to just recalibrate. Um, and then when you do take a concentrated source of carbohydrate, just keeping in mind water is necessary to dilute that carbohydrate. Otherwise, like Nick was saying, it dehydrates you in the process of digestion. And so not only are you getting dehydrated in that process, which is going to increase your rate of perceived exertion, obviously, um, decrease your performance, all of that, but it's going to give you GI issues as well. So just kind of like stepping back and like looking at the bigger picture of what's going on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I hate when that happens to me, but it does happen when you make dumb decisions, like I did. Learn from me. Okay, race execution. So you can control the first half to own the second half, right? And so that's really where you're on racing. Or on race day, I like to just remind people the only things that you have really a lot of control over is your pacing and your fueling. Obviously, there's a couple other things, but those are the main things. If you pace it improperly really early into the bike, you know what that feels like later on. Same thing on the run. The swim, most of us have one gear, and it's like I'm dying. So I think like the swim, you just got to survive and try to get the best you can. And especially if it's a hot swim, if you're swimming in like 80-degree water and you're exerting yourself, like you have to put that into account to make sure when you're in transition. And I think we'll talk about this, so I'll just lightly say it. You can wear like a cooling situation in transition. You want to control your core temperature. Don't put your wetsuit on straight away if it's hot out and you're baking in the sun. Like you want to have that lower body temperature for as long as possible before you start the race. So for the bike, right? So if you're an aero, that's another factor. Your digestion is going to be a little bit more liquid. So remember, you don't want to liquid or you don't want to sacrifice your ability to take in fueling because you're just so focused on being aero. And you don't want to miss bottles at an aid station because you're going so fast. And this is most pro athletes, so we can't grab a damn thing. And volunteers also do their best, but they just don't get it. We're going 25 miles an hour and hitting a bottle that is stationary is real tough. So make sure that if you're relying on course fueling for hydration or refills or whatever, you slow down enough to get it because it can ruin your whole race if you miss a bottle or you eject a bottle. So remember, dose frequently, don't do only one at a time. Make sure that you're taking in carbs and hydration that aren't super concentrated. And on the run, for sure, the first 10 to 20 minutes, it should feel too easy. It should feel like my shoes are doing all the work. These carbon bastards are just running. I don't even barely stepping on them and they're just launching me. I always tell people for the first half of the run, let the shoes do the work. So you're just focusing on your footwork, your carriage, you're being present, your mechanics. You're not worrying about anything because if you do start to worry about being too hot too early, then you've probably already overdone it. So just you really got to put yourself in that cooling conservation mindset really early into these things. All right, let's keep going. Now that you've got to see Magnum from Mark Dubrick. All right, issues athletes should expect and prevent. So cardiovascular drift, that's where the heart rate's going to go up at the same effort. Let's say you ran this 7-minute pace, no matter what, but your heart rate's going to creep up more and more and more and more because it's hot. Your body can't sustain that output with that level of, or without that level of cooling available to it. So remember, cardiovascular drift is normal. And for that, you need to lean into RPE. Go slower in the heat, accept that everybody's going to have to do it, and you just have to slow down, not as much as them. Okay? That's the rate of attrition for a hot one. GI shutdown. Practice the fueling in the practice your carb to liquid ratio, or even sodium to carb to liquid ratio. You don't want to screw that part up. That'll kill your race. That's what I did. Know your sweat rate, drink the plan, and not to thirst, right? So sometimes if you are taking in a lot more sodium than you need, you'll just be really thirsty and you'll want to just chug a bunch of water. Just remember, you have to make these calculated decisions even though you're under some stress. Keep sipping. Be sipping all day long. That's all you got to keep doing. And if you show up topped off with blood plasma volume, as we try to remind everybody through precision fuel and hydration sweat testing, you're already ahead of the ball game. You don't want to show up dehydrated. Know your sweat rate. That's a good one. You can also overdrink water and flush out a lot of your sodium and get hyponatremia. Remember when that was a huge thing everyone was so scared about because nobody was taking enough sodium and they were taking in a lot of water. That is a health risk that can really put you out for a long time. So make sure you're always balancing sodium. Don't forget about it. Those drink cups out there on the run course, you don't know what the hell are in them. So I sometimes will take a little bit of those, but I won't count on those as like my main sodium source. I'll just take those 250 milligram sodium pills and I'll just dose those out because I know exactly how much sodium I'm getting over the course of the duration of the run. And those have been really helpful for me. Y'all might have something else. Those base salt containers with that 1,000% markup on pink Himalayan salt they used to sell, those were great too because that salt bypasses your stomach and goes straight to your bloodstream from your mouth, in your mouth. Like that's the best part about it. You're getting sodium response right away. And you don't have to digest it like a pill where you got to break down that little membrane and digest it. So just have a plan for how you're going to get salt. Sun exposure is going to increase the heat. So make sure that you don't miss out on opportunities to put yourself into some sun and deal with what that's going to feel like, even if you have to walk around to kind of cool down a little bit. Cramping doesn't automatically mean that you are low on sodium. Usually that's just a system overload. It's like a brain freeze for your muscles. They have been overcooked. They've not had what they need. Maybe you're asking too much of them and they're just going to lock up. So remember, a cramp isn't always like sodium's the third thing usually or fourth thing. And that's why we train so damn hard so we can avoid those damn cramps. Decision fatigue, yeah, you're gonna make some choices out there, and they may not be very good because you're like a little slow and you're tired. And just remember, if you stick to the simple fundamentals of I need to have dosing of carbs, fluid, and electrolytes routinely, and that's why like every other aid station, you can have like I'm gonna do carbs at this aid station, hydration at the next aid station, or something to that effect. As long as you have a system that you can rely on, that's what I want you to take away. Just a quick little practical 2 week heat block. I mean, this is kind of elementary, but you can do an easier bike or swim and then a quick sauna. The next day, you'll want to, sauna and heat prep stuff is stress. Don't forget, you are still stressing your body's systems. So we don't want to overdo back-to-back heat, forced heat sessions. Space them out. Allow your body time to adapt to them. So that Wednesday, maybe you're going to go ride out in the heat instead of in the morning. Thursday, you might do another hot bath at night or not at night, not at night, but a hot bath after a swim, a recovery day, and then maybe you're going to like try to replicate race conditions on that Saturday, backing up by a little bit of a lighter sauna. Like you don't want to have a hard intensity depleting threshold day and then go do a really tough sauna day. Okay. We want to put those heat adaptation days on the heel end of a recovery day or not right at the crux of you just trying to get the most quality. Because remember, you're trying to get the most quality of every session to push yourself, to get those thresholds, to get the higher power, to get push the heart rate. And if you're fatigued and if you're carrying around a lot of this stuff, if you're not sleeping well, it's going to negatively impact your body's and mind's ability to push the sessions and get more out of yourself. Okay. I think we've hammered that into a pulp. We're almost done. So, your checklist before you even get to the race, what is your sweat rate in these conditions? Do you know? Will I carry ice, fluids, salt? How am I going what's my backup? What if I go to wave at somebody, I trip, and this stuff all just explodes and falls everywhere? Worst case scenario, what's plan B and C? What type of fluid, sodium, and carbohydrate targets have I practiced and what sources? I think that's the other thing. If you're mixing 5 or 6 different brands of fueling, try to limit it to maybe 2, because at least you know that those companies are going to kind of work better together. And if you've taken a whole lot of various random products and you have a bad situation, you don't really know what the problem was. So keep it as simple as possible. What are the early warning signs and that I know? Like if my heart rate hits 160 in the first 2 miles, then I'm screwed. I know I'm not coming back. Like what do you need to avoid through testing? How can you cool down as much as possible, even if you have to walk for 2 minutes and get a lot of ice in you to get that core body temperature a little bit, some mitigation there. So, how many sessions did you complete in the heat? How did you respond? Taking thorough notes on that. I noticed I was 10% struggling. I was awesome at it. I love the heat. I don't know. I'm really good at it. Everyone sucks. I'm good. You might surprise yourself. And what is your most conservative start plan if it's hotter than expected? And it can even be colder than expected. Let's remember that. It can be like I did Ironman Wisconsin like 4 or 5 years ago. It was like 80 degrees. And then this cold front came in and it was 40 degrees and raining. And I got hypothermia after 45 minutes on the bike and I shivered for 6 hours in a church. Maybe not 6 hours. So just remember, heat prep also can make you a little more susceptible to the cold. And that's why I can't swim in a cold pool anymore. What is the aid station prescription? Like, what are you going to rely on course, if anything? We're at a day and age where you shouldn't need to take anything except for some rinse off or plain water on the bike. Or let's say you ejected, an electrolyte bottle. You can get that. And there should be no ejections. Okay. You should be rubber banding or hair tying all of your bottles until you need them. Don't be a person who loses all of their calories over the train tracks. All right. I think we're good on that. It's a good checklist. All right. Almost done. So yeah, heat's not going to reward toughness. It's going to reward the preparation. Because even if you're really super tough, you're still going to get beat eventually if you didn't prepare right. So you've got all the tools, you got a lot of resources, and you've got the ability to take this all into your own hands. Just a couple anecdotal things that I kind of wanted to add at the end. Even losing around 2% of your body mass loss is, let's say 170-pound person losing 2%, that's about 3.5 pounds. And you can lose a whole lot of performance based off of that, just off of 2% if of that much body weight loss. And it can increase carbohydrate oxidation in the muscle, glycogen use, especially when fluid restriction causes body mass losses over 2% and core temps are over 0.5 degrees Celsius compared with better hydrate. So this is basically just some scientific stuff I pulled out. But your carbohydration intake and absorption is also going to be your body's going to do less of it. Okay. And that's why you can't take in more concentrated doses. You can't take in the same, 100 milligrams of or 100 grams of carbs an hour. You might have to do 80 grams with more water, So those are the things to remember. Your carb uptake is probably going to be restricted also during the heat. So plan. And then, yeah, those are the last things. I don't need to say it again. I've probably said it 30 times already, but 1 through 6 is like the final summation of everything I just said. Any questions, comments, concerns, cool things that have happened to you in the heat where you overcame extreme circumstances or or destroyed. It can happen. Dana, have you ever had a heat issue? Heat race, hot race issue? No.
No, I've always done heat training and it's super effective for me. So I've thankfully, like, knock on wood, do decent in the heat. And I prefer the heat. I struggle in the cold. So,
Yeah, same.
yeah.
What about what about you, Sergio? You live in friggin' Colombia, the surface of the sun. Any love? You still there? You eating dinner? All right. Well, that's kind of all I've got. Um, anything else? Anyone have questions? You got some people who do a lot of stuff here if you want to get some answers.
I will say for females, there's like females that are menstruating still, like in that luteal phase, your body temperature is higher. You might notice this. Your fluid needs typically are going to be higher and you do become less heat tolerant.
Mm.
But heat adaptation does really, really help benefit you. So if you have a race that falls in that luteal phase, definitely pay attention to that. And do your due diligence and do the heat training. And then females that are in that perimenopause and menopausal phase, you're you're less you sweat later. So like as you start, say, running, your sweat response is slower to happen. And so you're more susceptible to getting heat-related illness. Your body temperature, your core temperature rises much faster. So just something to pay attention to, like individual differences. You might notice this like in that luteal phase or as your hormones change in perimenopause and menopause and um, the effects of that and just paying attention to that, practicing the cooling strategies to keep that core temperature cool, hydrating, and I will say especially going into your training sessions and your races, well hydrated, doing that preloading strategy can be really effective so you don't develop like heat stroke and anything like that. But always happy to answer questions on that side. That I like talking about the female side. So
Perfect. I wouldn't get it. So thank you. Um, let's see. Comments. In the comments. Let's get in there. Yes, heat exhaustion. If you experience it, you'll have like Dana mentioned, you could have a hard time tolerating heat for a period of time as your body reacclimates. Like I know I've had hypothermia 3 or 4 times, and I suck in the cold because of it. So the goal is to not get heat exhaustion by doing some light heat prep. Cool. Got it. Anyone else? Everyone's good? All right. Well, final words, Adam.
No, thanks for everyone showing up. We always appreciate everyone joining us and yeah, being part of what we do. And I'm not so sure what the June webinar will be, but we'll put our heads together and get a good one planned for you all.
Yeah. Any announcements? I think custom kits have been shipped out from the last order. Wetsuits are coming, starting to ship 1 or 2 June from Blue 70 because those were way late. Um, if you need discounts on stuff, let us know and join RTS Racing because that's where they're all designed to be. So next big race, I think, will be Boise 70.3 for like a ton of people being there if you can make it. I don't think we have any other big races. We have got Tucson Camp and with Annie, she'll take you through a lot of heat prep. And then we'll have a swim school here in St. George. And then we'll head into wintertime and then Cozumel and Mallorca. So plan for camps if you want to come out and have some fun. And maybe Dana will come to camp even. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Happy Valley also is going to be a lot of people participating in that event. I don't have anything set up, but I know Mark's going since Jackson's been injured, and we've got a bunch of other pros. So we may have a bit of a meetup if you're going to Happy Valley. Cozumel full, I don't know. I love that place. So you never know. But I'm also going to do Western Australia. So we'll see what the rest of the swim or the calendar looks like. Swim school, I think, is going to be in September, and I think Tucson's in October. So, anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for showing up. You're dismissed, and we'll have this recording on YouTube if you want to send it to anybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Is um Tucson camps in middle or late October?
I don't know. I have to ask Andy.
I can't remember.
Middle to late.
Okay, because I
It's
think
like
I
I
have
think it's I want to say it's
Waco.
like the third weekend.
Okay, because I think I have Waco right before that, and then I'm trying to figure out how to come to Tucson, and then Nick, I don't know, maybe you think it's too much, but then in November we're planning possibly Ironman Florida, and then I've got a High Rocks race in the middle of December.
Send it.
I like
There
it.
are there are 5 weekends in October this year, and the camp is
Oh,
on the fourth weekend, the 24th and 25th.
Mhm.
word. Okay.
Well, it's the 23rd, 21st to the 26th I have on the calendar.
Yeah, 21 to
Okay.
26. So it's like a
I thought it'd be
5 day.
a fun little like after deload, get ready for Florida.
Absolutely. It'd be a lot of fun stuff going on. All right. I'm going to go eat. I'm starving. Thanks,
Same.
guys.
All right, see you. Good
Thanks,
night, all.
Nick.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, y'all. Thank you,
Yep.
Nick. Thank you, Adam.
Got it.